Curriculum can never be neutral. It has never been neutral. Those who decide on it obviously put their understanding, their thinking into the textbook, which is not correct.
When Akbar waged war with Maharana Pratap, it was actually the Maharaja of Jaipur who was actually fighting on the ground. And these are important nuances that children must learn. I'm not saying that anybody was good or bad. It's simply that history is of grace.
You must vote for his or her party to convince people that our ideology is the best. Do you expect the Minister for Education and Government of India to say, no, the BJP ideology is not good, please vote for Congress? Would that happen? I won't mind a very well-informed, learned professor who has weaknesses for Congress and sits on the committee.
Hello and welcome. You're watching me, Sanket Upadhyay, on The Federal. The show is called AI with Sanket. This is the AI of news because news in India today requires not artificial but analytical intelligence. Now, we have seen the politicization of education as a course of debate or a subject of debate on various occasions. As a natural corollary to this debate is whether the course curriculum must be also subjected to a political bias or a political leaning. And that discussion is now also on because latest media reports suggest that a new committee which looks into the course curriculum that children will learn, Gen Alpha, not even Gen Z, will learn, has 4 members with direct affiliation with the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. So is this an attempt to catch people young, to let the Gen Alpha or whatever the next generation is called know about the philosophy of the RSS at a school level and put it into the textbook? Is that a right approach? Or should the people who decide what the curriculum be rise above their political affiliations or their ideological affiliations? I must tell you that here there is an inherent assumption that all those people who will or who have RSS affiliations would necessarily want to put that in the course curriculum. I can individually have my own ideology and yet choose to have an open mind. That too is a possibility. Let's quickly put this to a discussion. I have with me Mr. Nikhil Jain, is a political analyst and an advocate, and also Professor Chandrabhan Sharma, former chairperson of the National Institute of Open Schooling and Educationist. Professor C.B. Sharma, thank you so much for joining us. I want to begin with you first, Professor Sharma. This huge debate on whether people with a certain ideological leaning must be involved in the process of deciding what students will learn. Is that a good practice, in your opinion?
No, obviously it won't be. And I think you have answered. Somebody who has a political ideology, who is an activist, when you say that, you are perhaps connotating that one is a political activist. So such a person cannot be one who should be deciding on what to teach and what a student should learn. But then, let me quickly add, education, especially school education, is about changing minds, creating human beings with a certain type of thinking. When we just develop, and I've been an integral part of it, when we develop a textbook, when we choose a story, when we choose anecdotes to put into a textbook, we have in mind when a student reads this at class 6, how would he or she grow? So there's a difference between a story of Shravan Kumar when we put in class 6, that he or she should grow into a person as an adult who would care about his parents. So curriculum can never be neutral. It has never been neutral. Those who decide on it obviously put their understanding, their thinking into the textbook, which is not correct. Look at the textbook from across the globe. I remember reading a textbook of history, the British textbook, and that British textbook said that we went to different countries of the world, spread culture, civilization, and India was one of them. But we had to come out of India because after the World War, our economy was so poor and we couldn't afford to maintain such a big country with so many people. So we had to come back. But we are not very happy about it. We should have continued in India so that we could spread culture and civilization in India. Read textbook of Britain. Go and read textbook of Pakistan. You won't find a reference of Gandhi. I can quote you books which narrate this. Read your Indian textbook. Do you have any reference of Jinnah? So perhaps we are in a fool's paradise when we say that textbooks can be neutral. Textbook will not have a color. It depends upon the academics who decide on it. Now, the second question, Sanket, obviously is, should such people be developing textbooks or not? Who should be selected to decide on textbook, stories, and everything? Unfortunately, the history of textbook development in your own country has been such. You have never been honest and you have never been neutral. We'll come to that later.
Yeah, I think these are very important and cogent points that have been raised by Professor Sharma. Nikhil, just coming to you. First of all, this present situation that we are talking about operates on an assumption that people who would have links or affiliations to the RSS's ideology would necessarily put that in practice when they're deciding on the course curriculum for students. So do you feel that this is an inevitability?
Sanket, honestly, I think it depends on whether the people choosing such people affiliated with the RSS are choosing them because they're great academics and happen to be linked with the RSS, or they're choosing them because they're a bunch of psychopaths. And honestly, in the past 12 years, we've seen numerous cases where people without the requisite academic rigor or professional expertise have been placed into positions. So I'm sure you're aware of the case of a journalist who wrote a book in great psychophancy for Narendra Modi. He was made an information commissioner who carries a rank at par with the Supreme Court judge. I don't really understand what the two have to do with each other. And that's exactly what I feel, what I worry might be the case with these committees that are going to decide the textbooks that our children are going to read in their elementary education, primary education, and so on and so forth. It's one thing to be affiliated to an organization. It's one thing to be sycophantic to a leader where you start, propounding untruths. Like when you have the prime minister himself saying publicly that in ancient India we must have had plastic surgeons, that we had something like Lord Ganesh, which honestly I feel is also an insult to the faith. But that apart, when you have a cabinet minister telling people in public rallies that I keep an onion under my pocket and that helps me without an air conditioner, where you have all sorts of illogical, pseudo-scientific, inaccurate, untrue things being said by the political leadership en masse, and that political leadership, which is known to appoint sycophants into positions of power, importance, and influence, then I think the entire things become suspect. And I hope that the textbooks are not, geared towards suiting a particular political narrative. Like, for instance, this entire controversy about the role of Mughals in India, whether they were invaders, whether they were settlers, whether they were foreigners, how many Hindu temples they demolished, how many Hindu temples they gave patronage to. Now, the point is, we all know that history is a very complex subject. It's all grace. You had Hindu rulers supporting Mughals, you had Mughal generals in the army of the Hindu Shivaji Maharaj. But that is not how the current political dispensation sees it. They want to paint everything in a black and white lens. They would never tell you that when Akbar waged war with Maharana Pratap, it was actually the Maharaja of Jaipur who was actually fighting on the ground. And these are important nuances that children must learn. I'm not saying that anybody was good or bad. It's simply that history is of grace. When you have people like this, I fear that students will be taught everything in a black and white, and knowledge and imparted in a manner that helps a certain political narrative, helps a certain political dispensation.
Professor Sharma, just quickly coming back to you, you see, you raised an extremely important point. The history of how it is decided in this country of what children should learn in their school books or in their textbooks. Now, you made a very important point that countries decide their foreign policy or their national interest or their biases dictated by their country's position as to what should be taught. For instance, in the United Kingdom, the colonial rule is not spoken about, right? It is, and what they did in India is not spoken about. obviously the idea will be to position the United Kingdom as the greatest of the powers. In Pakistan, as you mentioned, and likewise in India. Now, is this necessarily wrong? Is this the correct approach? The debate over here is harping on internal division. You see, externally, if you were to put yourself, or position your country's point of view and teach that to students, that is one point. But to internally conflict and challenge a certain idea of India and present it and replace it with another, which may or may not be the reality, will that necessarily be correct? I think this is the gist of what Nikhil Jain wanted to say.
Without antagonizing Nikhil, I would like to say Nikhil is being too political. I'm an academic. I wouldn't like to be that political. I have many names to drop and who were on the committees before 2014 and look at their backgrounds. Just one name. Teesta Sitalwar was the member of CABE, Central Advisory Board on Education. Does it deserve to be on CABE? I will leave it there. I won't like to make it political. Now, look, as an academic, what I would say is, with great effort, we should try and make our next generation humanist, tolerant, right? If we keep increasing it, we are walking a tightrope. So, as a citizen of India, I must be a voter. I must have voted for a political party and an establishment. So, it doesn't mean I will toe only that line. As a teacher, I believe we must create humanists, so give both points of view in our textbooks so that our students are able to take a neutral position wherever they go in the world. After all, why are MIT, Harvard, Oxford graduates more neutral? And they are able to present neutral ideas in spite of the fact that they hold a British ideology or American ideology. But when you look at them, when you discuss with them in a debate, they appear more tolerant, more humanist than our children, because we have created a generation of intolerant people, let me tell you. So what will be the stand? And what is my suggestion then? Look, presently your school education especially is directly under government. There is two things. You created a University Grants Commission. Even if it is for the namesake, it is outside the government, and officially government cannot interfere with it. The chairman UGC has to be an academic. It's a different matter that for the first time in the history of India, the Secretary Education, a bureaucrat, is chairman UGC today. Very unfortunate. But then the UGC says an academic must be chairman. You don't have school education, any regulatory statutory body. It's directly under the minister. The central agencies like the Kendriya Vidyalaya, the Navodaya Vidyalaya, even NIOS, CBSE, NCERT for that matter, is under the minister directly. The minister happens to be the chair of the council of NCERT, which is wrong. An academic who understands academia should be chairing the NCERT. Why do you have the minister? And it has not happened today. It has been there since ever since the NCERT was created. Why did you create a body like that and put your minister as chair? And similarly, all the minister of school education in the states are head of the state boards. So they decide what to teach. And unfortunately, through the 72nd Amendment, we put education in concurrent list. So every state is saying, we are independent. We don't need to listen to the central government. Now go to Mudaliar Commission. It has clearly said what would be our next generation cannot be left to the states. It has to be a concern of the central government. You didn't hear him. And you put it in the concurrent list. I will give you an example. I'm presently in Jharkhand. Now the Jharkhand government has passed an act where the Secretary Education, a graduate with no academic background, will be part of the selection committee of vice chancellors. And now we have to take orders from the minister and not the governor. Governor has practically lost his relevance in university system in Jharkhand. The Minister for Education is our boss. The Secretary Education is the second boss. So what I want to say is the school education has been in the control of states and the ministers. What is the job of a minister? To muster vote for his or her party. to convince people that our ideology is the best. Do you expect the Minister for Education and Government of India to say, no, 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 the BJP ideology is not good, please vote for Congress? Would that happen? You have created it yourself. I believe we need to have a very neutral discussion, unlike what Nikhil Jain is taking a stand. He is taking a very partisan political stand. Let us discuss education neutrally. You are creating your next generation. Education, school education must come out of the government control, the central government as well as the states. You should not have government control. You should have independent regulatory statutory body outside the government. Now, I would quickly add, you are changing University Grants Commission to a Viksit Bharat Shiksha this time. Look at the 12 membership, 12 members who would be sitting on the Shiksha this time. Practically 10 would be the central government nominees. And you had 4 quadrants suggested in the Higher Education Commission of India, ECI. Financing, regulatory, accrediting, and general education. You have taken away finance. And the government says, we will be allocating funds. Why? So that they are under your control. The process and the intention to control academia is bad, whichever party in government. So what I believe is you need to have a complete relook at the system of education, the regulatory process, and think over it. I would definitely refer Sanket that you should look into the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhishtan bill right now, because I have analyzed it. There are 12 members, going to be 12 members, 2 from states, 10, rest 10 will be practically nominees of the central government. Today, the government may think that it will have its own setup. What happens if you have a different government tomorrow? And then you would say, oh, this setup is no good. I think we need to have a very neutral discussion on education in spite of our ideologies, and school education especially, because we are creating the next generation and we are not doing a very good job.
I think, Professor Sharma, I would tend to agree with most of what you have said. Nikhil Jain, you see, especially when you're deciding the curriculum of a subject like political science, then one would assume that you would want to teach the students the differing views, political views, right? Opinion of all hues. And if this remains in political control, then right now you are upset about the fact that there are RSS nominees who have entered into the committee. Tomorrow, if there is, say, for instance, a Congress government, there will be Congress nominees. If there is a coalition government, there will be coalition nominees. So it will, a political science or any other course curriculum, education basically, will always remain politicized. And you see, it helps and suits the political class to keep education politicized. Why? Because that way you exert control over the minds, young minds. You see, what is the problem that the BJP is facing right now? It's with the Gen Z. So you are able to color opinion in television, you are able to color opinion on newspapers. But how do you convince a youngster about your political ideology? By catching them young. Now, unless you de-link or de-hyphenate this entire process, very little is going to change. Tomorrow it may suit you. That's not solving India's problem.
Sanket, even I do agree with most of the points that Professor Sharma has made, and I didn't intend to take a partisan stance per se, which is why I never chose to name the political party that I'm talking about. I intended to take a contemporary stand. We are living in a dispensation that's been continuous since the past 12 years. Of course, we can go back before 2014 and talk about whatever wrongs that government, those previous governments did. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I 100% agree with the fact that education and its control needs to be non-political. As Sanket, you very rightly pointed it out. Today, it's a BJP government, they are doing a particular line. Tomorrow, it might be a Congress government, they might do another line. One day, if God knows there might be a communist government, they might do something other. Education cannot be like that. Education, I truly, genuinely believe, whether it's history, political science, or any other subject, it has to be neutral. It has to teach different points of view. It cannot be to impart a political color or do some sort of propaganda with the youth of the country, which is why I 100% agree with Professor Sharma. There is no point, no rationale to the Minister of Education, who is the politician, to be sitting on chair on top of academics, or for that matter, even the education secretary, because he's a bureaucrat. He may be very smart, he may be very efficient, but that doesn't make him an academic. That doesn't make him the right person to be in those boards. At
Nikhil,
best, he
let
can
me
be a
give you
member
an
secretary.
example. Nikhil and Professor Sharma, one by one. Let me give you the example of this failed agency called the National Testing Agency, led by a bureaucrat, right? He is considered to be a very able bureaucrat. Now, he may be really able, but look at the sort of institution he is leading. I think the biggest enemy of Viksit Bharat is the National Testing Agency. And even now, an agency which has completely lost faith and trust of the students and the nation's people, there is talk of its reform. I think you should just end this organization, reimagine it with academicians at the top. Eventually, what test will be conducted for your academic rigor, right? So academicians have to be at the top, not bureaucrats. This is the problem with this agency also. Change its name. Call it Viksit Bharat G Exam G. Huh? Call it whatever.
Sanket,
Professor Sharma, call it
just
VBG Exam G. But
whatever
please
you
have an
call it.
academician at the top, not a bureaucrat.
You have stolen my words. I have been saying that again and again and again, and I will tell you things in corollary. See, I'm privy to the discussion on the creation of NTA, and we had not visualized that it will conduct paper pencil test. That at that point of time, the discussion in the ministry was, and I'm privy to that we should have online tests. We are a large nation and we cannot manage paper pencil, so we should have an organization which will have a setup of online tests only. Now, as a policy person, I would say we had not visualized that this will go and conduct tests for 24 lakh children, which would be paper pencil. It doesn't have the whereabouts. First. Second, we had not visualized that a bureaucrat will come and sit at the top of it. You put a bureaucrat. Now, I have said only a few days back, when somebody asked me what should happen to NTA, I said the first thing that should happen to NTA is for the period that this person is NTA chairman or director general. No, chairman is an ornamental position. Let me tell you, he has very little say in NTA. The director general, nobody should write his or her ACR. The bureaucrats dance to the tunes of somebody who writes the ACR. I had faced this as chairman, National Institute of Open Schooling. I was the only academic chair of a school board. I was also recommended by somebody very high up that please involve this agency for online tests. I said, no, I cannot. Because I knew what is going to happen. So I said no. And nobody could do with me anything. If I was a bureaucrat, I would have been transferred to Manipur. Right? So I have said, one, if you want to transform NTA, make the Director General completely autonomous. Nobody should write his or her ACR so that he works independently. Here, the whole problem has occurred. My boss wants the question to be set up here, to be set here. These people would examine. These people have to be put on panel. If responsibility is mine, I won't hear anyone because then I will have to answer questions. Nothing happened in NIOS for the 5 years that I was chairman. I didn't hear anybody. So many central cabinet ministers called me, make this your exam center, make that your exam center. And I said, no, nothing doing. I won't, because I knew what's the reason. Why would anybody like to have an exam center in one's school? I can understand that. So what is required, Sanket, is make NTA completely independent. Who is the boss of NTA? The Secretary of Education and the minister again. Why don't you have? And that is why, because I shouted so much. And I have also raised the question. Don't look, Abhishek Singh. I tried to find out about Abhishek Singh because you have mentioned his name. He joined only a few days before this test. Everything was done before him. I will only mention, don't ask me to elaborate it. Look at the history of NTA. Who were the first people? Who brought these 47 who have been thrown out today? Go and catch them. If you have moles, how would you run a system? Let Abhishek Singh decide and do everything. If that goes wrong, hang him. Put me as the NTA Director General. And see, I won't hear anyone, not even the Prime Minister. And I have said on platforms, let nobody come and tell me Prime Minister wants like this. I've said on the case of NCERT that you have NTA, that you have a 6-member committee. Don't let anybody come and tell this committee, Prime Minister wants this. That has spoiled everything. And your NCERT case is that somebody comes and says, Prime Minister wants this, and we are so cowed down. Now, what to do? Prime Minister wants this. So I should not put this on the curriculum or that in the curriculum. Prime Minister doesn't want anything. Do your work and let the NTA do an honest job, and then you will succeed.
Okay, Nikhil Jain, just quickly coming back to you. Sorry, I had interrupted you because I just wanted to make this case in point of the NTA. Sorry, please continue.
I was just saying that I completely agree with Professor Sharma that any agency, institute that is to design the curriculum of the country, that is of the CBSE or any other important educational body that will have ramifications across the country, I don't think there should be any political appointments in that. At least we should restrict it as much as possible. Now, for me to say that the government should not appoint them, somebody else should, that be bizarre. At the end of the day, it would be the government appointing whichever government it is. But as many checks and balances as we can have, perhaps a complete bar on somebody who has a political affiliation, not including a bureaucrat or not including a politician or a minister in any form in the board, whether as a chairman, whether as a director general, or whether as on any other key post. I think that is the prime solution here. But the problem is that whether it is this dispensation or perhaps the previous ones, I know more about this one, not trying to be partisan, they would try to inject their political color into it. So even if they do that, I think the one thing that should not happen at least is that we should not be teaching our children falsehoods or a certain narrative of history or political theories that are not in sync with the universally accepted versions of it. That's what happens.
Yeah, we should not have an outlandish version of alternate reality as reality. And which is why at the beginning of this broadcast, I very clearly said that it's very natural for people to have an opinion and to believe in an ideology. But that is something which they will do in an individual space. For instance, Nikhil Jain may believe in certain ideology, I may believe in certain things, Professor Sharma may believe in certain ideology. But should that necessarily color my functioning, scientific functioning in the role that I am playing? Right? So if a person who believes in a certain ideology, Professor Sharma,
yes,
should that person, when he sits to decide the course curriculum, let his political ideology be at the fore? Or he should be objective enough to know that, fine, I may believe in whatever I do. Right now, I have a job to do which demands neutrality.
See, it's very difficult. I mean, easy said than done. If I am a deserving academic, I won't care about any dispensation. I have a position, I have my following, I have my students who respect me, and I'm happy about it. But if I'm not an academic, then I get into power. I get things through connections. That is bad. Now, I remember a central government minister making a statement when ex-government was in power. They appointed their people. Now my party is in power, so I will. That is a bad statement to be made. There is no academic, and I would hate any party calling me his or her person. I'm nobody's person. I'm an academic. So what I believe is a deserving person should be there. No controversial person should be there, so that one is able to understand children and develop. Now that we should also answer this question. Look, you have this new committee, and you are mentioning four of the people who have RSS connection. I know some of them. I know their writings, but I won't comment on that. Tell me, is there one professor of education specializing in social science teaching? I was looking at the committee, and I was trying to look for a person who is an educationist and is an expert of social science who understands pedagogy. Look, right from the beginning of your NCERT committees, we have been making this mistake. All the great professors don't understand children. So they may know political science, they won't know what exactly to teach to a 14 to 18-year-old. But you have a committee, and very highly placed people, they don't know. There's not a single school principal. There's not a school teacher of social science. Find one from anywhere in the country, and they are very good teachers. With the CUET, you have got the coaching centers for social science. Go and find who are very popular social science teachers. Bring one or two up there. Bring a few professors of education who specialize in social science teaching. There's not one. So I believe that the committee is, I mean, not very well placed, and it doesn't have the right people in the committee. They could have been. I won't comment on those who have RSS connection. They might be very good. They understand at least their ideology. The problem in our country is those who do not even understand their ideology. There may be a Congress person who doesn't even understand Congress ideology, but one is close to the corridors of power. And that person sits and makes a mess of everything. I won't mind a very well-informed, learned professor who has weaknesses for Congress and sits on the committee. I hope you get the point. That learned
absolutely, 100%.
Because what if one is an academic, one won't be a communist, a Congress, or a BJP. One will be an academic. That is the problem. But right from the beginning, I won't go into history of writing textbooks in India and NCERT. It has a checkered history. I won't go into that. We need to change that course of action.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to change, then that change should be in the interest of the country and what is right, not to shift the course textbooks to the right of the ideology. So different sort of right should not happen. Thank you very much, Nikhil Jain, as well as Professor Sharma. It was lovely talking to you. Thank you so much.
My privilege entirely. Thank you so much.